picked up our chairs, our tables, our snacks, everything, and we're excited to head out to the University of Washington for the first time for our 2018 van campaign.
And action.
All right, we're here at UC Berkeley today, our first day in California. We've heard some pretty wild things about the anti-Israel community here, about them denying speakers and getting violent with presentations. So we wanted to come ourselves and see what it's all about and how we're treated.
Israel's a racist state. You're a racist. You support genocide.
I don't. You support using your people's suffering to attack mine.
You're supporting a genocide.
You're giving fuel to the conflict.
I definitely think there's a lot of hostility to Israel. There are a lot of people who don't really understand the issue.
From your experience in the past 2-3 years on this campus, like what is the environment when it comes down to topics like Israel?
It's openly hostile to anyone who seems to disagree with what the student body wants.
There are some times where it's not really safe to talk about Israel in the classrooms, and sometimes on Sproul, here we are, this is the main area on campus.
Wearing an Israel shirt and saying I'm part of the Israeli people is not offensive.
It's not offensive to you, but you also have to understand why someone may find it offensive. It's like if I was wearing...
I have 4 friends that were killed by Palestinians. I don't find offense by someone wearing a Palestinian flag.
Of course, it kind of elevates that you are pro-Israel government.
No, you're pro-Israeli people. It's an actual people.
Okay. You also have to understand how people would perceive it. You can't be completely ignorant
I understand
to the
how
fact.
they can take it,
Yeah.
but it's wrong the way they take it. The same way I would say to an Israeli that it's wrong for you to see a Palestinian flag or to meet someone that's Palestinian and directly assume that they're bad. But listen to me for 1 second.
I'm not going to listen to you.
I don't believe that.
What does Zionism mean?
Zionism, well, at least from what I saw people yesterday that were very passionate about it, like endorsing like the ethnic cleansing of like Palestine.
The whole idea of Zionism is to make Israel and that land, Palestine, only for Jewish people.
Zionism would be Israel being expansionist, right? Expanding its borders. Am I correct in that?
So Zionism, in fact, is a very simple one definition term, right? It's the right for the Jewish people to self-determine on their homeland. Okay. Now, how that has played out later on with politics, with ethnic conflicts, with all sorts of things, has nothing to do with the very idea that the Jewish people have a right to self-determine. A lot of people that we've experienced on different campuses, they conflate conflict and suffering of one group as a way to kind of try and undermine the very term Zionism.
We believe that people who are against this idea and say that Jewish people should not have a country, that borders line with anti-Semitism. This is their message here today, and we'll be happy to hear from you. What do you think?
Throughout history and stuff like that, the Jewish ethnic group have been like pushed out of like their native homeland. So being able to have like sovereignty over their own birthplace of their like religion and like their ethnic group is like important.
And that doesn't mean no other people have a right to self-determine, or people have to be kicked out, or people can live there or not. It just means that the Jewish people have a right to exist.
You're gonna feel for those people because like they have less, like they're dying more, like, you know, or at least what it seems to look like from like everything that the media shows.
The reality is that there's no future without Palestinians and there's no future without Israelis. So when people use the word Zionism and they flip it to mean to something else, it kind of doesn't give me a space to be able to try and end suffering on both sides. It kind of puts me on a different spectrum and say, well, we can't speak with you just because you're a Zionist, when the very term Zionism is defined incorrectly. We're going to hijack your movement that meant so much for your people after so much suffering, and we're going to turn it into this equals the suffering of another people. You know, the same way you wouldn't want to define black rights by KKK members, LGBTQ plus rights by anti-gay people, women rights by misogynists, we shouldn't allow people that are anti-Jewish rights to define what Zionism is. Have Palestinians killed No Palestinians killed innocent Jews. Oh, so they're not innocent people. You think they should be killed because they're Jews?
Video.
There was a war.
No, there was not a war. It was called.
There was no war.
It was an ethnic cleansing.
It was a war where your
cleansing.
leaders and their fellow Arab leaders tried to attack Israel. There are consequences for action.
Hey, bro.
When you attack a
I hope
country
you
and
kill
you
more
lose,
Palestinians.
I don't kill Palestinians.
I hope you kill more innocent
But you use
people.
the death of
I
Palestinians
hope
to try
you
and kill
kill
my
more
people
innocent people.
and justify it. You said the death of a Jew is the death of a settler. So
That's
you were
what I said?
That's what you said.
Now you're putting
Do
words
you
in my mouth.
condemn the death of Jews
Now
over
you're
there?
putting words
Do
in
you
my
condemn
mouth.
the death of Jews?
Now you're
Do
putting
you
words in my
condemn
mouth.
it? I condemn the death of Palestinians. Do you condemn
I
the death of
don't
Jews?
condemn. I don't support any killing of any people.
Do you condemn
But why
the
are
murder
you?
of Jews in that land?
I condemn the killing of any
Do
people.
you condemn
in
the
any
murder
land,
of Jews
friend.
in that land?
Do you condemn the killing
So
of
you're not willing
Palestinians
to,
in my land?
I do. You're not willing to
Oh,
say you
you
condemn
do?
them.
He doesn't acknowledge my humanity. He will not condemn the murder of Jews in that land. He defines Zionism as the suffering of his people. However, Zionism is the liberation of our people, not at the cost of any other people. In order to move forward, you have to be able to see the other side, it's humanity, and want to move forward with them. I'm not his enemy. Maybe our grandparents fought, maybe even we fought, but there's still a way to find, for our children not to fight. But he wasn't interested in finding that way, but hopefully other people will.
I support Palestinians and Arabs for an equal right to self-determination, but not at my expense in my indigenous homes. Its existence did not ever have to come at the expense of other peoples living in the land. Now, if you take into consideration the power dynamics of the situation, Transjordan, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, all responsible for waging a genocidal war against Israel the day after it declared its independence. If you're expecting that the Jews will just stand there and die again, be just sheep for the slaughter, you're wrong. You have to consider the culpability that's involved with that.
So the idea that we have a right to come back comes back thousands of years old, and the term Zionism is 100 years before Israel was created. So the very idea that the Jews have a right to come back has nothing to do with Palestinian struggles today. How about when the Arabs around you, the countries around you, actually proclaim that we need to drive all the Jews into the ocean and kill all of them, and then they actually go and do that, and then what do you do when that happens?
So at this point you're talking about a hypothetical?
No, that actually happened. It's a manifestation of an ethnic conflict that happened, and you can put blame on many sides. Like you could even start the blame with the British, saying like we're gonna put a line in here and the Arabs there and the Jews there, and neither side wanted that. However, after that happened, there were wars, 48, 67, and 73, and the consequences of those wars is the situation that we're in today. The consequences of those wars shouldn't be blamed on the country that was attacked.
Jews and Zionism have become a central focus. They have become a deeply alienated people. Zionism is an organic attachment to Jewish identity. It's impossible to really separate the two. I think the expectation from this political culture is that they will be able to successfully separate Jews from the project and well-being of Jewish independence. For them, that is what constitutes a victory. It's really an ideological war on an entire generation of Jews. And this is essentially the purpose of BDS, JVP, Students for Justice in Palestine. I think that they're the dominant cultures because they're the loudest. Many Jews have just totally fallen away from Jewish identity and to a connection to Israel because they're being bullied into submission by people who are just ideologues.
And if you ever had the opportunity to get to travel to Israel, would that be something that you would do?
Definitely not.
How come?
I am 100% support Palestine, yeah.
If you are supportive of the Palestinians, it must mean that you need to be an anti-Zionist. The agenda of intersectionality is that you need to check off a lot of boxes, and one of the boxes that you need to check off is being anti-Zionist. And I think they're getting this perspective that Israel is this white European colonialist, apartheid, empire that's oppressing people in the Middle East, when really the story is very different.
I'm an individual person. I don't represent the government.
You represent the government.
It's perfectly reasonable to oppose some of the policies of the Israeli government and to oppose the policies of many different countries around the world. When it gets to the point of the actual legitimacy of the Jewish state, then I think you've crossed the line into anti-Semitism.
They think, Israel, Jews and Jews are separate, but if you deny the Jews the right to a state, you're basically being anti-Semitic because you're denying them the right to their homeland and their safe land.
People keep saying, there's a difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, but I think people need to really start asking themselves, if there is a line and there is a difference, why does it keep getting crossed? Just last night, SJP released an event where they were going to hold a joint vigil for the victims in Pittsburgh and the victims in Gaza, somehow equating the two. There really is no line, and that anti-Zionism is the new form of anti-Semitism.
Do you think SGP tried to hijack a cause here?
Absolutely, that's exactly what they tried to do.
And we're here that this event not going to take place tonight anymore, is that correct?
It is not. After Tikva responded very strongly, they went on a big social media campaign and they decided to cancel the event and reschedule it for later on. So it's probably not going to happen, in my opinion.
The terms pro and anti-Israel are very black and white. I think you can be progressive and you can recognize perhaps some issues in Israel, because the term anti-Israel makes it seem that you are completely against the existence of this nation and the right of the Jewish people to have a state, which I think is very not progressive.
If you are beginning your ideological war against statehood in general at the feet of the Jewish people, if that has to be the first state that goes down, you might just be an anti-Semitic son of a gun.
You can't even bring it up. I have a radio show on campus, and I invited GUPS to come on my show, and they didn't want to have any conversation with me at all. So there's really not an environment for discussion here on campus. I tried to not take sides in this necessarily, just to hear people out, and they didn't even want to come on my show. That kind of hurt me because I was reaching out to them to come on, and if I reached out to a Zionist group on campus, there'd be people outside my door trying to fight me. So definitely a double standard here on campus.
Why do you think that if there is pro-Israel students or Zionist students that are going to come to your show right away, there'll be protests while the other side doesn't want to come get interviewed?
They said that if you even give a platform, then you are supporting them. You are sympathetic to their cause, and you even give them a mouth to speak. And to them, that is unjustifiable. If you even entertain the thought, then you're as bad as them in their mind.
We are kind of shed as an outcast.
Do you think it's normal that some students should be scared of their identity on campus? Is that okay?
It is normal, yeah, because there's so much hate out in the world.
And so when I tell you Israel, what are your first thoughts?
Actually, I don't really understand that word.
Israel, it's a country.
Oh, okay. Oh, country?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Israel?
Yeah, no, actually no.
No, it's your first time?
Yeah.
So would you say that there's a need on this campus for some sort of group that supports Israel's right to exist, that talks about Jewish self-determination?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
We're not right-wing, left-wing, one state, two state. Our goal is not to push political agendas to people living there. It's to kind of empower the next generation, first of Jews and our allies, to know why this land is important to us. So we have an even greater responsibility as Jews in power to actually help the region. If there are students interested in opening a grassroots initiative on this campus to talk about Jewish rights in Israel and to inform people and to bring people closer to a cause that me and you both know is a human rights cause.
Absolutely, I'll be down for that. I think that's a great idea.
SSI can represent something beyond an idea just for a campus, but basically an idea that sparks a new revolution within the future of the Jewish people. And I think it's SSI's job, or it has the potential job, to be able to be a movement that brings in ideas of who we are, what we want to do, who we want to be, how we want the world to see us, and how we want to be in this world, but not only making sure Jews have strong facts on the ground to answer back to anti-Israel. I think anti-Israel is a counter movement to our right to exist, and we have to lift ourselves up beyond that paradigm of just fighting against the counter movement to our right to exist.
Still got 2 hours and 20 minutes. Some crazy stuff are being done all over the country by a lot of people who love Israel, man. Flights, drives, man, hours on hours. Why do we do it? People believe in something, We work 24/7, man. We go to sleep with this on our mind and we wake up with this on our mind.
The conflict is incredibly complex, as anyone could probably tell you, but I don't know that I would say that the suffering of the Palestinians is inherent to the existence of the Jews in the Middle East.
So if I go all in when I'm playing poker and I lose, I can't then blame the other side for taking my money.
So why did they wage those wars then, is the question?
Well, if you look at actually what the leader said, is they said we need to wipe out all the Jews. We need to drive the Jews from the river to the sea. That's when they say, free Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine. Right, it's actually remnants of what their leader said. He's like, we don't want any Jews there. You can't blame the entire conflict on the fact that Jews want to live there. And that's actually, I think, the fuel to the conflict, that we kind of see it as it has to be one or the other.
And
when you go to a city like Shem that they call Nablus, right, you see a statue of a person that blows himself up and then rises into the sky, and it says you should kill every Jew because every drop of blood spilled for Jerusalem is holy. And kids are being raised with that. It does have to do with a little bit more than just policies that leadership is taking. It has to do a lot with the culture and also the refusal to counter that. So people who are still fighting against the oppression they experience, yet saying that the way that we have solution is not by actually having violence, because violence will only lead to more violence.
So if you're against Jews being able to live in their homeland, you're against Jews.
It's not the same though.
What's not the same?
There were no Jews in the homeland when...
There were always Jews.
Well, yeah, but not to the extent where everyone just poured in like that.
An act of decolonization to come back to our land. The Roman kicked us out, sold us
But it's
into...
an act of genocide to kick everyone else
Oh,
out
but
who was
no,
living there.
okay, so that's something completely different. That's ethnic conflict, right? There was a war, and there's a context there, and we can discuss that. However, the right for the Jews to come back to the land has nothing to do with that.
Okay, so now you're going to... You can't even have it. Hamad is a donkey. Okay,
Yeah,
yes,
you know
I
your
know.
Arabic.
I know my Arabic.
Why don't you learn your roots? Go back to
The
Morocco,
roots
where your
is
family's
Hebrew.
from.
My family's from Judea.
No, bro. No, they're not.
And they were kicked
No,
out
they're
from
not.
Spain before
Where's
Morocco
your family
and
tree,
Italy.
man? Where's your
But
family
I'm
tree?
explaining
Where's
to my
your
family.
family tree, man?
I'm explaining.
I got it. It's in my heart.
From
I got it
Arabia.
in my
From
heart.
Arabia.
It's not from Arabia, my friend.
The descendants of
It's
Arab
not from
colonizers
Arabia,
have a
bro.
right to live there, but they don't have a right to
Jesus was
take away
a
my land.
Palestinian, and Jesus
He
lived
was
in
a Jew.
Palestine.
He was a
He
Jew
was a Palestinian
living
Jew.
in Judea. The Roman Empire
Look,
hadn't
bro.
yet
Look,
destroyed
bro.
Jerusalem at that time.
You're not against Zionism. You're against like what happened after with the conflict. Palestinians being displaced, Jews dying, Palestinians dying. You're not okay with that. No one is okay with that. Not even Israelis are okay with that. However, when you go and you say that you're against Zionism, you're telling everyone who is a Zionist, which is all Israelis, that you're against their idea that they have a right to live there. The anti-Zionism movement is a movement trying to conflate Palestinian suffering, which everyone, no matter where you're from, should be fighting for to end, and conflating it with Jewish right to self-determine.
See, I guess I just think like none of this belongs on campus. Palestinian SJP's a
Right. However, like anti-Semitism isn't a joke.
No, it's not a joke.
Right? But like they're bringing people that spew anti-Semitism that have killed Jews and who support killing Jews. So for us, that's not a joke.
Why is Palestinian associated with like terrorist salaries here, you know?
Okay, because that's the Palestinian Authority is actually paying people who are going and killing Jews. We need to be able to condemn that. That's
Israeli
happening.
Authority is doing that too,
No,
and every
they're
Israeli
not paying
citizen
anybody
is
to
part of the
kill.
IDF.
If an Israeli citizen goes and kills a Palestinian, they are jailed and they're condemned by the entire society. That is true. That is 100% true. Like when Israel fires back, it doesn't fire back towards populations. It tells everyone to leave, and it does every preventive measure to make sure that people leave from the area before they shoot. However, Hamas forces people to be in those buildings. Israel did everything in its power to prevent casualties. There will always be casualties in war. And that's why we shouldn't be in a war. I'm against being in the war in the first place. Because this person here, okay, and this sign is my friend who died this summer, who came to UCLA 2 years ago. He had an entire family, and he was killed when he went to go to grocery shopping.
I believe that universities started for the reason for people to exchange ideas, even if sometimes they disagree with those ideas. You know, this is the place where we should have a conversation and a healthy conversation, even if sometimes we disagree, and too often we see that that's not the case.
They definitely pretend to be, but this is not the campus that promotes free speech or free thought. Me, myself, I'm not even white, and they've accused me of being a white supremacist, which, you know, really hurts me and my family, what we've been through in the past 300 years.
Israel was created in 1948. The idea for Israel
It was
created
reborn
in
in
the
1948.
1800s.
No, it was created like
you're
4,000
following a
years
white
before.
man. You're following a white racist
I'm
ideology,
not a white man.
bro.
We have the same
You
skin
follow
color
the white
and very similar
ideology.
genetics because we're
But
both
guess
Semitic
what?
people.
The problem is you're fighting for a little small group of old white men.
No,
who
no
claim
white
to be-
men.
who
No
claim to
white
be
men.
who they are.
I'm fighting for the right for Jews to
You're
self-determine in our
you're
land.
a sucker.
And now you know what?
You're a sucker.
You're going
and
back
you're
to
fighting,
insults.
and you guess what?
That's
you know
you're
why?
going back to insults.
Because you're ignorant.
Right? That's not good.
And you're fighting for people who don't give a shit about you.
I do.
You're fighting for
I'm
people who
fighting
don't
for
give
my
two
people.
shits about you. No,
Palestinian,
you're not.
Palestinian
No, you're
leadership
not.
gives a shit about you. Palestinian leadership gives a shit about
is
you.
not what it's about, bro.
All right, so how about you
Palestinian
empower your real
leadership-
people
the
so that they can make
Palestinian
decisions and not the leadership?
Now, we are resilient as Zionists, and we believe in the power of Jewish identity to overcome all of this propaganda, despite the huge wave, the billions of people that are behind this idea of hating Jews and destruction of Israel. And yes, we shouldn't kid ourselves. They measure in the billions. This has helped us to overcome generations of diaspora, and it will also help us to overcome this. We cannot afford to be alienating Jews who already feel deeply alienated. And when SJP and JVP, when they come to your doorstep, when BDS comes to your doorstep, the first thing we should do is hold a sign that says, "If you're Jewish, come and talk to me." And the first thing we should do is listen to them, because that's the one thing people haven't been doing. The one thing we have in common with those Jews is we're also experiencing alienation, but in a totally different way. They're forced to embrace the people that are alienating them, and they don't even know it.
So would you identify as a Zionist?
No. But I do believe Israelis and the state of Israel has a right to exist.
So what if Zionism just means the right for the Jewish people to self-determine on their homeland, having nothing to do with the conflict or status quo or everything else?
I think that's fine.
So if Zionism only meant that, would you be pro-Zionism?
Probably.
What do you do in order to be strong?
So to be strong means to respond when there's something that happens on campus, not letting anything slide, going on the offensive, so holding events that promote Zionism in Israel, not just responding to what the other side does. Challenge this sort of lack of intellectual diversity on campus. We're going to make our voices heard and make it clear that wherever anti-Zionism comes up, we're going to answer.
You're probably the most reasonable person I've ever talked to about this. I'm not gonna lie.
We appreciate you stopping by.
If you'll have a chance to travel to Israel and see things firsthand, do you think you would like to do such a thing, to learn more, or to even learn about things that you might thought that that's the case right now, but that's not necessarily the case?
Of course.
So you are open-minded to
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Outstanding. I think that's all we need. Thank you, cameraman. Hey, thank you very, very much. In the past week, we visited 6 universities on the West Coast. The fact is, there is an ideological warfare on Israel on campus. The bias, the misinformation, and the lies are outrageous. And for that reason, students supporting Israel engaged. We want you not just to support Israel from your home, but we want you to take your pride and support to Israel to campus. Contact students supporting Israel in order to find out how you can get involved on campus.